Okay, we're finally live on Facebook. Stan, thank you very much for joining me, and thank you so much for being patient. It's easier to get on the running track and run than it is to get on Facebook Live.
Well,
apparently.
we're making progress. I think we're making progress. A few stutters here and there, but I suppose that's the way to go. If you want to move, that's part of it.
I think we need to move everything over to Instagram. I'm feeling Instagram's going to get our love from now on.
Is it?
Facebook doesn't love us anymore.
Yeah, well, it took a while today, but well, we got there in the end.
It's only an hour and 5 minutes. So if you've just joined us tonight, we're going to be talking about how professional and elite runners choose their running shoes. So Stan, isn't it? Because there's so much, it's a bit of a hot topic with regards to the recent, well, not quite that recent, but the London Marathon, well, the world record being broken. It wasn't at London, but the world record for marathon distance being beaten recently in a very controversial pair of running shoes. But we're going to leave you at the end of the night tonight with Stan's top 3 tips. Being the elite running coach that he is, be interesting to hear what his top tips are for helping you guys choose the right pair of running shoes. So Stan, where does it all start with running shoes? Where does it go wrong?
I think it's like, like most of the things, when you have a market that's very vibrant with a product, it becomes a bit of a, some dilemma or a challenge rather for people to decide, which is the right product for it. And so that's the situation that runners find themselves in, and humans being humans, perception does play a huge part sometimes in these things. And so some of the decisions on what's the best shoe, running shoe to, to buy and use are really not based on some, the important fundamentals that a runner might need, so to speak. So that's the situation with running shoes. And I think that's why we chose the topic to, to have a chat on it, because it really is a challenge for most runners. I have many an athlete. Actually, there's not many an athlete who has not asked me a question, what do you think about my running shoes? I like to buy I like to change my running shoes. What do you think I should be getting? So it is a constant challenge that runners do have. But unfortunately, like most things, information is awash on the internet, but sometimes it's not very personal, it's not very specific, and therefore people sometimes make go along and make decisions which are not very very handy for their purpose and for their cause.
So it's the reason it's so controversial, isn't it, is because does it become performance enhancing when you start to modify the equipment that you're using in potentially controversial ways?
Indeed, that would be, because if performance is enhanced, beyond, beyond just what the human capacity is, then that competition becomes unfair, because it's not being determined by what it should be from an ethical point of view, which is human capacity. It is almost being, it is the advantage of other elements, other tools, which makes the competition unfair. And therefore, that's where the ethical issues come in, about, is it right? Is it wrong? Because all people want to do is a fair playing field. And in a fair playing field is when it is all about human capacity. And the only advantage that is there is one where one has worked on the various elements that constitute human capacity.
If you just joined us on Facebook, we are talking tonight with Stan Madiri, who's an elite running coach, and we're trying to find out what the best way of choosing your running shoes is for the general public. And also it's quite interesting to work out how the elites and the professional runners choose their running shoes as well. And you'd be surprised to work out you'd be surprised to find out, sorry, how they actually go about choosing it. But we'll save that for later. So Stan, when people are choosing running shoes, elite or non-elite, how would they go about looking for a good pair of running shoes? So they're key things that they should be looking for.
Yeah, I think the overriding theme in choosing a running shoe is twofold. One is, first and foremost, you want to retain your health. You want to be safe in a particular, in the chosen pair of shoe. So there is a health and safety element, which I would say should be the first consideration. And then the second consideration then would be the performance. Why you are buying that shoe is so that it can help you along, in meeting your movement tasks and your movement challenges, depending on what type of runs that you want to go to. You want to get a shoe that helps you along the way, in you fulfilling your running needs. So to me, those will be the two criteria. And then they would have their own sub themes within that. From a health and safety point of view, what are the subsections that you want to be looking at? And then from a performance point of view, which would think is the reason why you want to choose a particular shoe really is to attain a certain performance, an advantage in performance within a human scope, is what are the energy requirements for your event and how does your shoe choice meet that? What are the musculoskeletal stresses of your event and how does your shoe choice help you alleviate those stresses? So those would be considerations that you would want to come up, to put into the pot, into the mix in choosing a running shoe.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, Stan, the burning question is: you run, right?
Yeah.
Or you did run. What type of running shoes do you wear?
It depends, where I'm running, and if it's on the track, I'll have a different type of shoe to use for that. And if I'm doing just my own fitness running and I'm going out on a trail, which I like a country running, I have a different type of shoe, a shoe that has got traction, a shoe that will protect my feet from the rigors of the countryside. That's the type of shoe that I'll be looking at. So the surface on which I am going to run decides what shoe that I should be using. So that's, it wouldn't be, there's not one pair of shoe. I think what is fair to say, Steve, is that there is not the best running shoe out there. There's none. Yeah. There simply is the best shoe for an individual athlete. That's what is there. If we can find what is specific to an individual, that's the best shoe. That's the criteria to arrive at the best running shoe. Otherwise, to go looking for the best running shoe as per se or per se, that in itself is not exactly the way to go about it. You don't want the runner to fit into a shoe. You want the shoe to save the runner.
It's the shoe to save the runner. There's one shoe to rule them all, Stan. I think that's the quote from a famous film, is it not?
I'm not sure about that one, Steve.
Excellent. So I know there's people are very passionate when it comes to choosing the right running shoes, and they obviously have lots of opinions about it. But in terms of the biomechanics of the running shoe, are there particular things that I know there's lots of different foot types. We come across them a lot with clinic. People that are forefoot runners, midfoot runners, rear foot runners, like forefoot, midfoot, rear foot, forefoot, rear foot, midfoot. So there's lots of different heel strikers, toe strikers, lateral foot strikers, medial strikers, pronators, supinators, pes cavus, pes planus. There's tons of different, just the foot, never mind the ankle, never mind the knee, never mind the other parts of the body. But are there particular things that you should avoid when you're choosing running shoes? That's probably quite a good question to ask you.
Yeah, I think from a biomechanics point of view, it will be easy to investigate all the myriad of type of shoes that you've referred to there, the type of running formats that people would have by just looking at what is it exactly that takes place from a biomechanics point of view? The only two forces that are happening there. It is how much force is the athlete putting into the ground. So you're talking about the kinetic situations there. And then the second part we wanted to consider then is the quality of movement, the quality of the foot, ankle, and all the substructures of the movement. If you like, the geometry of motion, you know, that's the second part there. Apart from producing the force that we do as we come to land down, the next thing is what is the quality of movement? So the right shoe is the shoe that is going to accommodate both biomechanical factors. The amount of force that an athlete is putting into the ground, whether they need cushioning, whether depending on where they're landing on their foot, across from the heel going forwards. That's the type of shoe that they will decide on where exactly are they putting the force onto the ground. Now, this is the interesting part, Steve. That force is in itself determined by the speed at which they are traveling. The speed at which they are traveling will decide just how much force they are putting into the track. And so if somebody is jogging, their foot contact time is longer. Their foot is staying longer on the ground. They are applying more force on the ground than somebody who just picks up their speed that little bit quicker. Or if someone moves on into sprinting and their foot is on the ground, say 0.85 milliseconds.
Yeah.
So the speed with which someone is in motion is also important in making the decision on what type of shoe to put, on what type of shoe that they should wear. If I'm going to be in my jog and I'm just a moderate runner and the speed is not too fast, I'm spending too much time on the ground, guess what? I probably would need some cushioning to help me because of the duration that I'm spending on the ground. Whereas if I'm not spending too much time on my feet, maybe that cushion factor there is in itself a disadvantage. It's something that I'm just carrying along and yet is not necessary. If anything, it becomes inhibitive within my run. So the speed of the event, or the speed of the event and the distance that one has chosen, plays a part in what type of shoe to get.
Yeah, no, fascinating. If you're watching live on Facebook and you're enjoying the conversation so far, hit the like button. If you love it, then please do share the conversation to your social networks. We'd love to be able to spread the word about running shoes. But Stan, so if there's things that people should avoid, are there key things that people should look for when it comes to choosing the right running shoe?
Yes, there would be things that they would be looking for. These would be very personal. There are things that are the things that start with themselves. For a start, it is their own running technique. Their own running technique plays a major part in what type of shoe that they should be, getting, they should be selecting. The next one there is, apart from the running technique, then it would be what sort of foot patterns have they got? Something that you alluded to there. Do they pronate? Do they supinate? Is there too much ankle mobility there? In which case, then they'll need a type of shoe that has got stability components in it, whether it's on the inside of the foot or on the outside of the foot, depending on which way that they turn. Then, therefore, they're looking for stability, within that shoe. I think there are just two things, broadly speaking. They are looking for what is to cushion it, and one to what stabilizes the foot. Cushion is in terms of how much force they're putting into the ground, and then the stability is there to control if there's too much play within their ankle joint at the point of landing, whether the ankle joint is collapsing inside or outside. Therefore, they're looking for a shoe that can contain that tendency on the part of the foot to swing in or swing outside.
Yeah, fascinating. Now, so presumably there's so many different types of running shoes that you come across with the with the athletes that you see at the track, because they're all different morphologies and presentations in terms of the way they run with their efficiencies and things. But would you say there's a very popular running shoe? Because when I'm down at the track, I notice that even though they're all very different, they seem to have a lot of the same running shoes going on. So that wouldn't hold ground very much for the individual approach to selecting running shoes, because some of them are not going to be in the right shoes, right?
No, definitely not. And that's where the power of perception, unfortunately, takes over within athletes and runners.
Yeah.
It is what is out there that is popular. And so the choice of shoe is really not based on those fundamentals. It's the choice of shoe is based on perception, which is a social factor, whether that is because it has come from the people that they are in their network, or people that are at the club, or it's just because of strong marketing message that they are exposed to, and therefore they go with that choice. Definitely yes. And you have the latest shoe that's common, and it's got a loud voice and a loud visibility, if you like. And most runners, you find, most runners in a club or in a group tend to go for that one. But the choice there is really not based on the fundamentals of health or performance. And then, sooner or later, they start falling into a bit of, stress issues or injuries, emanating, especially if they run very long distances. And that shoe does not necessarily serve them, in those two important regards. Yeah.
Would you say that there's a particular running shoe type that people tend to go for if they're sprinters? Obviously, sprinters, you've got your sprinting spikes, but then you've got your different foot types associated with that running. But would you say there's different running shoes that that people tend to go for with sprinters, middle distance, and long distance runners?
Yeah, you do have type of shoes where you have minimalist, a type of shoes where the manufacturers are trying to mimic barefoot running, if you like. Yeah. And so they make the shoes very, very thin and very, very light, to try and gain that. Yes, the departure point is noble, in that if we stay as close to our natural gait as possible, then we're operating within the health and safety zone. However, the downside to it is that if I take on a minimalist type of shoe, and yet I am pounding the road, the place where I'm running is the road, or the treadmill. The surface I'm running on is one which it's a hard surface, and I'm putting in lots of mileage. That in itself then almost, gives a negative, it makes a negative contribution to the perceived advantage of a minimalist shoe, because the foot will just be taking on too much stress forces from the ground reaction forces when the limb or the foot makes contact with that running surface, especially if we're on the road or on the treadmill.
No, it's fantastic. So with the materials and the materials changing over time, Stan, do you feel that there's because I think, so I had a patient come into the clinic, and this is probably quite useful for people to listen to, because it's a really good tale of how wrong you can be choosing the same running shoe. So this particular patient came in, they had a little bit of, I think it was forefoot pain they had, and we couldn't work out what had changed, because I asked her about her shoes and she just bought the same shoes. The running style had not changed, the volume of running, her mechanics hadn't changed. We went through everything. We scanned her foot, nothing majorly wrong with her foot. In the end, what we did was to have a look at the running shoes. So I said to her, look, there's something not quite right here. So let's get your old running shoes, which she still had, and let's get your new running shoes and let's have a look at them.
Yeah.
So although the brand was the same, the model of the shoe is exactly the same. Well, I thought exactly the same. When we looked at it, I think it was an ASICS trainer, but ASICS released a trainer I think it's one of the 2100 series that was marketed as the same trainer, but they'd changed the material in the trainer, which you could see on the outside, on the lower part of the shoe. There was obviously something changed in terms of the manufacture of the lower part of the shoe, so the heel part of the shoe, which I thought was very interesting, that although it was the same trainer, it was actually slightly different in terms of the model. So there was a slight difference, and when we went to the manufacturer and asked them, the material had changed in terms of the manufacturing. So do you come across that quite a bit, that people buy the same running shoe, but they end up with problems as a result of the materials changing? So one of the times that I notice it is when people go from a very old running shoe into the same running shoe, but a new version of it, exactly the same. So no foul play there at all. But the material changes because it's a newer material.
Yeah, I think what would have, I think what would have happened also, I think it's important to take note that in the old running shoe, because of the mileage that they've done in it, or the whatever, however long they've had this shoe, the shoe has gradually over time started to take the biomechanics of their own foot. It has started taking a shape of their own foot, responding to the forces that the runner is putting into the foot. And therefore the foot is really getting more personal, if you like. It's getting very specific to their running ways, which is what we find when, and in an old shoe, you find it's got, it's more depreciated on the inside of the toe end, or it's more depreciated on the big toe end or on the heel. It's because that's the shoe is basically being molded by the forces that one generates.
Yeah.
And now that then changes. That then changes when they get a new pair of the same shoe, because the new pair has not yet been molded by the foot. It generates different ground reaction stimuli back into the foot, which the foot had forgotten about. The foot, if you like, the foot had broken the shoe into its own mold. But when they get a new one, the foot unfortunately has to respond to the new one. And that in itself creates different stimuli to different musculoskeletal positions within the foot, albeit minutely, but they are still different forces anyway. And those in themselves, depending on how much they are, the quantity of those forces, or in what direction they are being put into the foot, they can create an issue, one or two issues, with that as well.
Yeah, no, very interesting. So we were lucky enough to be invited out to the Adidas factory with one of the athletes that we work with. And what was fascinating is the history of the running shoe.
Yeah. So
it's actually quite impressive when you look at it, isn't it? Where running shoes have come from and where they are now with these kind of 4% trainers that the elites are running in. But where do you think running shoes are going to go from here?
I suppose, like anything else that is within the grip of technology, we can only wait and see. There's no stopping here. There's no stopping, as it were. But I want to suspect, like most things, they will go around full circle, if you like. They'll come to a point where we have pushed to the limit on trying to get as much advantage as we can. And that threshold, we should be able to hit the threshold there and find that we cannot extend or get as much as we can. We cannot get anything further from a shoe and start going back into the one. If, as an example, if we take the minimalist shoe, which is, something that just came onto the scene, and then by people using that and noticing that the statistics for injuries is getting higher, there's going to be a shift from that, and a different type of shoe is going to be made. But the balancing act is how do they retain performance advantage within the shoe, and yet balance off also with the component of health and safety. It's how do the manufacturers continue to play those two cards to the max, to the highest threshold that they can, so that both performance is attained, but also health and safety is also retained.
Yeah. No, very interesting. So Stan, I suppose the only question left to ask you is really, how do the professionals choose their running shoes?
Well, they would be different because professional athletes, being professional, have really on very specific matters. You know, it's all about specificities, and there will be within those specificities, they are not divorced from their contractual obligations. And so unfortunately, they will have other reasons other than just performance for the choice of shoe that they have to do. Their sponsors or their agents would like to create visibility for a particular product. So that's what the elite athletes will be consider in making a choice for their running. But of course, whatever it is that they put the input in that decision, performance is the number one, is at the top of their list. A shoe in which they will be able to get that PB or drop off those milliseconds or minutes, depending on the type of race. That's the type of shoe that they are going to be looking for, unfortunately.
Yeah, no. So on this trip that we went to the Adidas factory in Germany, it was really interesting. Part of the reason I brought it up is because the athlete that we went to had a 3D biomechanical assessment, I guess you could call it that. So 3D analysis, where they got her to stand on this platform. They did this 3D video architecture. They scanned her foot, so they looked at force plate, but also they looked at a 3D mold of her foot. And what they were doing with the athletes that you don't hear about on a day-to-day basis is they were customizing the shoes to fit her specifically, which I thought was very interesting, because the shoes that you buy on the high street are not the same ones that the athletes are wearing at the top end, are they?
No, they're different. Definitely, with a customized shoe, the customized shoe addresses those specificities that I referred and alluded to. Yeah. And the elite athletes can afford to do that because they've got that backing, they've got those resources with their sponsors. Their sponsors, they want to get this product on the market, and these high-profile athletes will definitely provide that visibility, so they can afford to customize that shoe for them. However, the same brand of shoe in the high street is really not personalized for every other runner that is going to be picking on it. In as much as it is perceived as a great product because the athlete has won the world, or rather a particular race wearing them, it is because that shoe has served them optimally, because it's done to their running technique, basically, as I alluded to. The shoe has fitted their running technique. That's why they've been able to perform for it. But that same shoe, that same brand out in the high street is not necessarily meeting everyone else's running technique. And so that's where the specificities is still, for the ordinary runner, the recreational runner will still have to be considered all the basic fundamentals. One, which is one of health and safety, and two, one of performance, and then look at the specificities for themselves. Are they looking more on a cushion end? Are they looking also on anything on the stability end? And all that is driven by how fast they run in their event. Those would be the considerations that will be there.
Yeah, no, fascinating. Brilliant. Well, Stan, listen, it's been great talking to you. Thanks very much for your time again. I think we need to show Instagram some love, I think.
Yeah.
I think if you're listening tonight on Facebook, you need to show us more love if you want us to stay on Facebook. But Instagram, I think we're going to move to Instagram. Don't you think?
Indeed, man. Indeed,
Let's do it. So you need to set yourself up an Instagram account, and we'll head over to Instagram. But we will be live on Facebook, because I know Stan will probably take just as long as I took getting on here tonight, setting up an Instagram account. But we'll be live on Facebook again on Saturday evening, and we're going to be talking about some interesting stuff on Saturday, aren't we, Stan?
Yes, we are. On Saturday, we're talking about a rather important component of performance, which is strength and conditioning, but which unfortunately is not so high up the list, you know, for long distance runners, for most runners really. Strength and conditioning is not something that they put up there on the top list. So that's what we'll be talking, sharing, having a discussion on why it is important and what sort of strength and conditioning mechanisms should a runner bring on board and include in their repertoire of training regime.
Excellent, excellent. So if you run, if you're a personal trainer, if you're a strength and conditioning coach, that's going to be exactly what you want to hear on Saturday night with Stan and myself. Stan, I think we need to get Shamima on, don't we? Your psychologist friend. I think that'd be fantastic.
Yes. Let's get Shamima on and hear what.
I know she's listening, so she definitely needs to come on with us. Brilliant, great. Listen, I'm sorry about the delay early, everyone, and thanks for your time, Stan. Thanks for being patient, and we'll look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks for your time. See you later.
Bye. See you soon.